Probability past paper questions. Events A and B are such that, what does this mean? What does this notation mean? Probability of A is 0.3. Probability of B is 0.8. And probability of A and B, you can also write it as an intersection using set notations, is equals to 0.4. State, giving a reason in each case, whether events A and B are they independent? How do we check for independence? लिख कर दो, लिखो, write it down. If you multiply their individual probabilities, what is the product? Probability of A multiplied by probability of B. What is the product? A intersection B. Is it the same? Intersection. Is it the same? So that means the events are independent or not? So when we consider probability of, you can इसकी जगह A and लिख सकते हो, intersection कोई compulsion नहीं है. So you say probability of A into probability of B is not equal to probability of A and B. So the events are not independent. What about mutually exclusive? Mutually exclusive are events that cannot occur at the same time. Are these events occurring at the same time? R से देख, horse, it's written in the question, A and B both are occurring. The probability that the both events occur together is 0.4, which means they are not mutually exclusive. The probability of them occurring together, दोनों events, जैसे example देता हूँ, in a dice roll, what is the probability that I get a 5 and a 6 both in the single dice roll? 0. That means 5 and 6 are mutually exclusive events. They cannot happen at the same time. The probability of the events occurring together is 0. I roll a dice. What is the probability I get a 5? 1 over 6. Probability I get a 6? 1 over 6. What is the probability that I roll a single dice and I get a 5 and a 6? Think logically, if you roll a single dice, how can you get a 5 and a 6 both? Can you get both? 0. The probability of both the events occurring at the same time is 0. That is what mutually exclusive events are. The question is telling you that A and B are occurring at once. Probability of them occurring together is 0.4. It is not 0. Event A भी occur कर रहा है, B भी occur कर रहा है. Is this clear? Now have a look at this question. The people living in 3 houses are classified as children, parents, or grandparents. Have a look at the data. All the people in all 3 houses meet for a party. That means all of these people are together at once at the same time. One person at the party is chosen at random. Calculate the probability of choosing a grandparent. So what is the favorable outcome? How many grandparents are there? How many grandparents are there? 6. That is a favorable outcome. How many total people are there? Read the question. बाहर देखोगे तो simplified. देखो probability of selecting a grandparent. All the people in all 3 houses meet for a party. All of these people are together at once at single place. What are the total number of people? And how many of them are grandparents? So 6 out of 16. You simplify it and you get 3 over 8. Is this clear? बिला वजह मिलता हुआ नंबर लूज करा दोगे if you write 0.37. 0.375. Write the exact value or leave the answer as a fraction. तो 3SF 0.375 ही होता है. A house is chosen at random. Then a person in that house is chosen at random. The question is giving you a hint using a tree diagram or otherwise. Obviously, a tree diagram will help you. Trust me, if you are not good at tree diagrams, the rest of the syllabus will be very difficult for you. Very difficult. Because in many places, you will not only have to draw tree diagrams, you will have to visualize the question in the case of a tree diagram. If I draw a tree diagram, तो इस तरह से बनेगी. सही है ना? So tree diagrams are a very vital part of the remaining syllabus of probability. नहीं, पहले understand the chain of events. The question is telling you the chain of events. Tree diagram जब आप बनाते हो, there are chain of events. What are you doing? You're saying first you choose a house. That means you can either choose house 1 or house 2 or house 3. Then you go into that house and then you choose a grandparent. Is that right? Is that right? So you must draw a tree diagram of this nature. Something like this can be drawn. And you understand you don't need to write all the outcomes because the question has not asked you to draw a tree diagram, it has asked you to solve something else. So first we can either choose house 1, house 2 or a house 3. The probability of choosing house 1 is 1/3, of house 2 is 1/3 and house 3 is also 1/3. Then in house 1, what is the probability of choosing a grandparent? 2/7, and probability of not choosing a grandparent not is 5/7, but I do not need to label that because that is not the focus of my question right now. Understand this, we are not drawing a tree diagram because the question asks so. We are drawing a tree diagram to help us solve the question. But the question is not to draw a tree diagram because proper full labeling करनी पड़ती है. Then house 2, what is the probability of choosing a grandparent from house 2? 3/7. House 3 में grandparent choose करने की probability is 1/2. नहीं, that is a possible event, not chance. Chance तो probability calculate करेंगे ना. बिल्कुल 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 ऐसा ही, बिल्कुल ऐसे इवेंट्स हम लिखते हैं ट्री डायग्राम में एंड उन इवेंट्स की probabilities. So now let's trace the path. The question says grandparent choose होना चाहिए. What are the possible paths? It's either house 1 and grandparent. In a single path, all the probabilities on tree diagrams are. What do we do? एक path में जितनी probabilities आती हैं, O levels में कर आई. Yes, you multiply out the probability. So house 1 उसका grandparent, so 1/3 into any other path. Yes, or house 2 and a grandparent, 1/3 into 3/7. House 3 and a grandparent, 1/3 into 1/2. And you add all these probabilities. Write it down because you would need all these steps in the next parts. So house 1 grandparent, then house 2 grandparent, and then house 3 grandparent. You think you can just skip the tree and get to the answer? Trust me, you'll have a very hard time in all the all the upcoming topics and the subtopics. Tree steps के लिए नहीं, it is used for many different concept development as well. Is this the answer? So this is the entire probability of choosing a grandparent. Okay, now the next part is regarding conditional probability. We'll use this example to understand conditional probability. सवाल पढ़ लिया? S1, the entire paper is 1 hour 20 minutes and 50 mark paper. 1 hour 15 minutes का क्वेश्चन, पता नहीं शायद अब हो सकता है, मैं चेक कर रहा हूँ केमिस्ट्री से, मैं हमेशा confuse हो जाता हूँ. And total writing time in this paper is 25, maximum 30. That's why have they given us so much extra time? To read, to comprehend, to understand, to evaluate. And if you are not willing to spend time on that and just looking at the answers and the steps, तो फिर आप paper में you will not be able to do anything. So kindly read thoroughly, attentively, focus what the question is asking. Because many different things can be done, but if you do not read the question carefully, you cannot do anything correctly. So understand one thing, we will try to understand conditional probability. For example, number से समझा. I have a class जिसमें there are 10 boys and there are 8 girls and 2 male teachers. Is this right? What is the probability of choosing a male from this class? Male, just a male. 12 over 20. What is the probability of choosing a female from this class? What is the probability of choosing a teacher from this class? 2 over 20. What is the probability of choosing a student from this class? 18 over 20. Now understand this thing. Given that a male is chosen, what is the probability of choosing a teacher from this class? What did I tell you? Given that a male is chosen. Now I've already told you that we are choosing a male. So denominator में 20 नहीं आएगा, 12 आएगा. Because a male is chosen. उनमें से what is the probability of choosing a teacher? So 2 over 12. Is that right? यहाँ पे तो आपको numbers पता थे. But what is the other way of doing it? आप probability से भी कर सकते हैं. Denominator में आप male की probability रखते, which was 12 over 20, और numerator में male teachers की probability रख लेते हैं, which was 2 over 20. We simplify होकर 2 over 12. So this is called conditional probability. Again, this example will help you understand it. The question is telling you grandparent is chosen. So denominator में ये वाली probability लिखेंगे या नहीं लिखेंगे? क्या grandparent? Now out of these 3 events which could lead to you choosing a grandparent, the question is telling you now your favorable outcome is a grandparent belongs to a house where a parent also lives. Understand this thing? Choose parent को नहीं कर रहे हैं. We are still choosing a grandparent, but now उसमें से what is the favorable outcome that the grandparent lives in a house where a parent also lives. Yes, house number 1 and house number. So now try to understand it through probability. I can say, is this my favorable outcome? Is this also my favorable outcome? I'm still choosing a grandparent. And is this my total outcome? Given that a grandparent is chosen, choose grandparent हुआ है, उसमें से what is the probability that the grandparent belong to either house 1 or house 2? If I rephrase the question will become a grandparent is chosen, but what is the probability that the grandparent belonged to house 1 or house 2? Can I also say this for this particular question? Wording so confused कर रहा है कि grandparent वहां रहता हो जहाँ parent भी रहता हो. सही है? So उसमें से, उस probability में से, this is how you'll do it. you'll write the probability of grandparent in the denominator. उसमें से out of all the possible ways of choosing a grandparent, you will find the favorable ways as per the question's requirement of choosing a grandparents. And this is called conditional probability. The keyword for conditional probability is that in most of the questions, the words given that is used. Given that ये event occur कर. We're still choosing a grandparent. Now, what will you say? House one grandparent or house two grandparent? This is your favorable outcome. Divided by now, you do not need to divide it by the total. You divide it by the total probability of getting a grandparent. The word says given that ये event तो अगर हो रहा है, जैसे I told you, given that I choose a male from that class, तो फौरन तुमने denominator 12 कर लिया था. इधर अब तो choose आप male ही कर रहे हैं. You are not choosing anyone from the entire class now. Is this clear? So given that, yeah, the words used are conditional probability. दोनों use होते हैं. Topic का नाम है. The subtopic is called conditional probability, and this for this question, ये आ रहा है 10/17. Verify the value. देखो. The first serve lands in the correct area or not, 0.65, 0.35. Then the second serve lands, and he wins the point or he loses the point. If the first serve is not in the correct area, then he goes for the second serve, which he lands in the correct area 0.8, or he does not land in the correct area 0.2. If he lands it in the correct area, he wins the point, the probability is 0.6, and he loses the point, the probability is 0.4. And if he does not land it in the correct area, फिर तो guarantees he loses the point. People who play tennis are very well aware कि दो serves गलत होती हैं तो you definitely lose a point. So lose करने की probability is 1 and win करने की 0. Same thing, if you have written it as a fraction, as a percentage, nothing to worry about. Eventually, you know you'll have to use it in calculations. So this is the best one to use in calculations. Decimals, calculator putting maybe will be easier for you. Okay? Now the question says, using your tree diagram, find the probability that Don loses the point. Trace all the possible paths when he loses the point. कैसे कैसे lose कर सकता है point? एक एक करके, one thing at a time. He lands it in the correct area and he, लिखो एक एक चीज, 0.65 into 0.1. He does not land it in the correct area. He serves again, he lands it in the correct area, then he loses the point. पहले सब लिखो, प्लस एंड में कर लेना. पहले write all the possible paths. Or he does not land both of them in the correct area and he loses a point. Obviously, फिर तो guarantee lose ही करता है. So this is how probability of lose निकाल रहे हैं. कर सकते हो, वही तो कह रहे हैं. If you multiplied by 1, will this change this value? Understand this thing. This is important कि अगर पता है कि एक ही आउटकम होना है तो ट्री उसका आगे बनाने की जरूरत भी नहीं है. Sometimes you might need this concept in the future topics as well. Is this clear? Can I understand the chain of events? He does not land the first one in the correct area. Then he lands the second one in the correct area. And he loses a point. To add एक पाथ में जितनी probabilities आती है उनको multiply करते हो, वो level से पढ़ते हुए आए हो, समझते हुए आए हो. एक पाथ में no matter how many probabilities you have, if you're tracing a single path, for a particular end event, तो सारी probabilities multiply होती. And if you have multiple paths, you add them up. Find the conditional probability that Don's first serve went into the correct area, given that the question has told you point lose करेगा. So denominator में, very good. Denominator में we will write down the probability of losing. What will we write in the numerator? Understand this thing. He's still losing a point. बोलो. Very good. He lands the first one in the correct area and he loses a point is your favorable outcome. And the total outcome is not the entire thing. The total outcome is वो lose करने में से there are three ways that he might lose a point. एक ये way है, this way and this way. And the question is telling you that point तो lost हो गया. तो denominator में you put the probability of losing a point. उसमें से this is your favorable outcome now. The basic logic of probability is still here. Is this clear? If it's 5/19, write it as 5/19. कोई बात नहीं. Final answer can be rounded off to 3 SF, but you can leave it as exact fractions as well. 2.65 तो वही तो किया. और what have we done? Denominator में point lose करना. Second serve correct नहीं. Question कह रहा है first serve is correct. पहले तो क्वेश्चन इज आस्किंग फर्स्ट सर्व करें. क्वेश्चन इज टेलिंग यू पॉइंट लूज हो गया. उसमें से व्हाट इज द प्रोबेबिलिटी कि पहला करेक्ट किया था फिर भी पॉइंट लूज कर गया. समटाइम्स नंबर्स आर आल्सो प्रोवाइडेड. हैव अ लुक एट दिस क्वेश्चन. पेज नंबर 17 है आई गेस. बुकलेट का 15. पेज नंबर 15 क्वेश्चन नंबर 5. The first part is asking us the probability of males. 618 males, 206 plus 412 out of total number of people, which is 1281. Then male and employed, 412 still out of 1281. Now the question is asking, are the two events independent? How will we check for their independence? दोनों की साथ अगर करने की probability तो हमें पता है 412 over 1281 है. We find their individual probabilities and we multiply. If we get the same answer, that means they are independent. You already know the probability of male. Can you find the probability of employed? Employed की probability कैसे निकालोगे? 412 upon 307, 412 plus 307 out of 1281. So probability of employed is 717 out of 1281. ये नहीं आ रहा है क्या? 717 out of 1281. If you multiply the probability of M and the probability of E, do you get the probability of M and E? Do you get the same answer? Multiply करके do you get the same answer? Part 2 का आंसर और multiply करके do you get the same value? No, you don't. It is not equal. That means the two events are not independent. Given that unemployed, now denominator में we'll put all the people who were unemployed, 564. And उसमें से we need the unemployed females. Is that right? So this is conditional probability. And understand this notation. This is the notation for conditional probability. Probability of female given that के लिए line लगाते हैं that it is not employed or E not. This is the notation for conditional probability. Is that right? And how did you calculate it? अगर मैं लिखना चाहूँ तो probability of F intersection employed not and divided by probability of. So understand this notation for conditional probability.